Yes, good day again, beautiful people. Yes, we will continue with your renal physiology. Okay, we're done with glomerular filtration, and yes, we will move on to your tubular reabsorption and secretion in this video. Of course, these are parts of the processes in the urine formation. On to your tubular secretion and tubular reabsorption, first let's take a look at a review of your epithelium of the renal tubules. Okay, your proximal convoluted tubule. Okay, it has a simple cuboidal epithelium. Okay, the cells are tall and interdigitate with one another. Please note that this intercellular interdigitation serves to increase the overall cellular surface area. And yes, please note that these interdigitations are characteristic accordingly of your salt transporting epithelia. Please note that for your PCT has a large convoluted portion, no? You call that as your pars convoluta. And then there is a straight portion, you call that as your pars recta. This straight portion or your pars recta actually is called otherwise known as your thick descending limb of loop of Henle also. Okay, in your proximal convoluted tubule, there are interdigitations of the epithelia, but then there are also brush border. Okay, your simple cuboidal epithelium of the PCT has a brush border. And yes, this brush border provides maximal area for filtrate reabsorption, no, accordingly. And aside from that, your simple cuboidal epithelium, it has numerous mitochondria. It has numerous mitochondria. Please note kasi that when you say there is a numerous mitochondria in a cell, meaning the cell is active accordingly. It is doing a metabolic process. Okay, if there is, since yes, your PCT, it has a numerous mitochondria. Please note that they have also a high metabolic activity, and also they have abundant enzymes that are necessary for transport of various solutes. Okay, they have many enzymes that are necessary for transport of various solutes present accordingly. Okay, and so the straight portion of the PCT enters the outer medulla to become your thin descending limb. Okay, thin descending limb, and yes, this thin descending limb of loop of Henle is made of flat cells or lined by flat cells or squamous epithelium that do not interdigitate. Okay, that do not interdigitate. Please note, pakatandaan po ito that the fibroelastic, since we are talking about your proximal convoluted tubule, please note that your fibroelastic interstitial cells in the cortical areas near the PCT, okay, the fibroelastic interstitial cells in the cortical areas near the PCT produces erythropoietin. Again, huwag pong kalimutan, please take this down. The fibroelastic interstitial cells in the cortical areas near your proximal convoluted tubules, they are the cells responsible in the production of erythropoietin. And what does your erythropoietin do? It is a hormone that stimulates the proliferation of your red blood cell precursors. Okay? In the loop of Henle, please note that in your thin descending limb, there is no interdigitation. But then please note that in the loop of Henle, you have, at the hairpin turn of the loop of Henle, still it's made of flat cells or squamous epithelial cells. And please note in this area, interdigitation is evident. Okay, the cells interdigitate with one another. Please note that the interdigitating epithelium found at the hairpin turn of the loop of Henle continues throughout the thin ascending limb of the loop of Henle. Okay, it continues so throughout the thin ascending limb of the loop of Henle. The portion that has no interdigitation is your thin descending limb. And then at the thick ascending limb, please note it is made of cuboidal interdigitating cells. Your thin ascending limb is made of cuboidal interdigitating cells. But then, please note that it is only the basal two-thirds of the distal tubular cells that interdigitate. Okay, the topmost or luminal portion of these cuboidal cells has a simple polygonal shape and maintains a smooth border with the neighboring cells. Of course, in your distal convoluted tubule still, it is simple cuboidal, but then, I mean, it is somewhat the same with your PCT, but then you have lesser of interdigitation in the DCT. And yes, the amount of tubular convolution also is lesser in the distal convoluted tubule than in the proximal tubule. Your collecting duct or your collecting tubule, it runs through the cortex and medulla. Okay, and this one serves as the final site of urine concentration. And yes, its lining is made of polygonal cells with short microvilli and no intercellular interdigitation. If you try to remember, you have your principal cells and your intercalated cells in your collecting tubule. Okay, let's take a look at your tubular reabsorption. Okay, your tubular reabsorption, this is actually the process wherein substance are moved from the tubular lumen into the peritubular capillary blood and interstitium. Okay, the substances are reabsorbed. The substances moves out from the renal tubular lumen. Okay, that is for your tubular reabsorption. Okay, and you have two transport mechanisms that happens here. You have your active transport and your passive transport. Of course, you already know that your active transport requires energy. Okay, and so your active transport is a movement of a substance across a membrane against a gradient. Okay, against a gradient. And yes, please note that it requires the transport, active transport requires an energy, either directly or indirectly. Okay, and so either directly or indirectly. For direct active transport, it utilizes ATP to move substances. Okay, it utilizes ATP to move substances. While for your indirect active transport, it couples one substance movement with another gradient. Okay, it utilizes one substance movement with another gradient. Okay, your both accordingly your active transport moves substances across the cell via protein binding sites, and the substances of course bind. The protein changes the shape, and they carry it through the membrane, and of course they release it inside or outside the cell. Of course, active transport, the main driving force here is it utilizes energy in the form of ATP. It requires ATP. While your passive transport, sorry, a very good example of an active transport that takes place your in the tubular reabsorption is your sodium potassium pump. Okay, sodium potassium pump. Okay, let's take a look at your passive transport. Your passive transport does not require energy. It does not require energy. And yes, the substances move down their concentration gradient either across the cells or between the cells. Okay, and so it does not require energy. Tubular reabsorption. Please note that your tubules function selectively to reabsorb essential substances like water, glucose, salts, amino acids, and proteins. And yes, of course, it does not Okay, it does not reabsorb creatinine and metabolic waste, meaning it excretes creatinine and other metabolic waste. Of course, this is done so to maintain homeostasis inside the body. Okay, so you have here the substances that are actively transported in the proximal convoluted tubule. You have your sodium, your bicarbonate, your glucose, amino acids, proteins, phosphate, sulfate, magnesium, calcium, and uric acid. Okay, and so those are the substances that are actively transported in the PCT. Okay, while in your ascending loop of Henle, you have your thick ascending loop of Henle, you have the sodium and chloride. Sodium and chloride are actively transported or actively reabsorbed in the ascending loop of thick ascending loop of Henle. And then in your what do you call this? In your DCT, in your distal convoluted portion, you have here in your distal convoluted portion, you have your sodium and chloride, sulfate, and uric acid are reabsorbed actively. Okay, and in the collecting duct, for your cortical nephrons, sodium is actively reabsorbed. Okay. In your passive transport. So here are the substances that are passively reabsorbed. You have water, which is uh, reabsorbed in the PCT. Chloride is reabsorbed also in the PCT. Potassium and urea is reabsorbed in the PCT. Okay? Your what do you call this? Your thin descending limb, it passively reabsorbs water and urea. Your thin descending limb, it passively reabsorbs water and urea. And at the U-turn and thin ascending, at the U-turn and thin ascending, you have sodium, chloride, and urea are passively reabsorbed. And at the thick ascending, urea is passively reabsorbed. And in your distal convoluted tubule, water is passively reabsorbed also. Water is passively reabsorbed. In your collecting duct, at the cortical portion, okay, the cortical portions of your collecting duct, water and chloride are passively reabsorbed. Water and chloride are passively reabsorbed. Okay, please note that water is reabsorbed throughout the nephron, except in the ascending limb and the thin and thick ascending limb of loop of Henle. Okay, that are located in the renal medulla because they are impermeable to water accordingly. Here's actually an illustration of your proximal convoluted tubule. Okay, and so in the PCT, there is an extensive reabsorption of components of the glomerular filtrate. Okay, there is an extensive reabsorption. Okay, and so you take a look at this. Okay, you have water and chloride are reabsorbed going back into the capillary lumen. Okay, proteins, amino acids, and glucose, they are reabsorbed going back into the renal interstitium, going to your capillary lumen. Okay, please note you have here your apical microvilli of the PCT that provide a greater surface area for the absorption. And of course, you have numerous mitochondria which are prominent. Okay, and so in the cells of your PCT, what do they do? Of course, they produce or they provide the energy needed for the active transport of the various components. Okay, and yes, of course, in the microvilli portion, you have here membrane ion pumps or your sodium ATPases bring sodium ions into the cell and I mean they bring sodium ions into the cell from the glomerular filtrate. Okay, and so sodium ions from the glomerular filtrate going into the cell. Okay, and so going to, of course, the what we call this renal interstitium. Actually, an illustration of the reabsorption. Okay, please note that your proximal convoluted tubule reabsorbs more than 66% of the filtered water. Okay, please check this. You have your PCT reabsorbs more than 66% of the filtered water, sodium, and chloride. In addition, of course, since our body needs glucose and amino acids, please note that your glucose, proteins, and amino acids, they are 100% reabsorbed. They are 100% reabsorbed by the co-transport mechanism coupled to sodium. Okay? So normally, there should be no glucose, no proteins in the urine or in the ultrafiltrate. Okay, normally, since 100% of your glucose, proteins, and amino acids are reabsorbed in the PCT, normally, wala po dapat mag-a-appear in the final product, which is the urine. Okay, please note that other solutes like bicarbonate, phosphate, sulfate, magnesium, calcium, and uric acid are also reabsorbed in the proximal convoluted tubule. No? Okay. And so looking at that, at the job of your proximal convoluted tubule, please note that each day, as much as 140 grams of glucose, also 430 grams of sodium, and 500 grams of chloride, as well as 300 grams of bicarbonate and 18 grams of potassium ions, and 54 grams of protein, and approximately 142 liters of water are conserved by the proximal convoluted tubule of the kidney. Okay, of course, this process is needed for the normal functioning of the body. Kasi, if you excrete, kasi if you do not reabsorb water, then you need to drink 142 liters of water per day. Then you need to take in 500 grams of chloride every day. Okay, 'di ba? And yes, please note that the filtrate leaving the proximal tubule or the fluid, okay, the fluid volume has been reduced by more than two-thirds. Okay, and so the fluid volume has been reduced by more than two-thirds. And yes, because of a significant reabsorption of significant reabsorption of water, as well as significant reabsorption of salts, glucose, proteins, and other important solutes. Okay, but then please note that the fluid, what you call this, the fluid osmolality of the fluid osmolality of the filtrate leaving the PCT remains unchanged. Okay, it has 1.010 specific gravity pa rin po. Okay, and so same with the fluid present in the Bowman's capsule. Okay, and so the fluid osmolality remains unchanged. Okay, here are important concepts related to your tubular reabsorption. You have your renal threshold and your maximal reabsorptive capacity. Your renal threshold is accordingly the plasma concentration wherein active transport stops. Okay, meaning, please note, a renal threshold, it deals with the concentration in the blood. It is the concentration in the blood. Okay, for renal threshold. Again, that is the plasma concentration of the substance wherein it first begin to appear in the urine. Active transport stops. Okay, active transport stops. It will not be reabsorbed anymore. Okay, and it will appear in the urine. Okay, below the renal threshold, the kidneys will reabsorb all the substance. The kidneys will reabsorb all the substance. But then, once the plasma concentration exceeds the threshold, the transporters are saturated, and of course, so the transporters are saturated, meaning they cannot anymore accommodate the other substances, and these substances which are not transported will remain in the urine, and they will be excreted in the urine. Take a look at the example, a classic example. You have the renal threshold of glucose. The renal threshold of glucose is 180 milligrams per dl. 180 milligrams per dl. Okay, above this, the glucose will appear in the urine. 180 milligrams per dl. And yes, the excess, okay, the excess, if let's say there is 190 or let's say 200, okay, glucose levels, the remaining 20 will not be reabsorbed. Okay, it will appear in the urine. What about your maximal reabsorptive capacity? This one is otherwise known as your transport maximum. Okay, your maximal reabsorptive capacity is the maximum rate wherein the kidney can reabsorb a substance. Okay, wherein the kidney can reabsorb a substance. Again, it is the maximum rate wherein the renal tubules can actively reabsorb a substance regardless of plasma concentration. Please note, regardless of plasma concentration. And yes, your maximal reabsorptive capacity is determined by the number of capacity of transport proteins. Okay, it is determined by the number of capacity of transport proteins. Once this, what we call this, once this transport maximum or maximum reabsorptive capacity is reached, there will be no further increase in reabsorption. Okay, no further increase in the reabsorption. Okay, that is for your renal threshold and maximal reabsorptive capacity. These ones are important concepts in understanding, okay, the components of the urine. Then you have your tubular secretion. Please note that your tubular secretion is the movement of substances from the peritubular capillary blood and interstitium into the tubular lumen. Okay? This one is your tubular secretion is to eliminate metabolic waste and those substances that are not normally present in the plasma, like drug metabolites, mga ganyan. Okay? And yes, this also your tubular secretion is also important to adjust the acid-base equilibrium of the body. Okay, just an important concept here is that your tubular reabsorption and tubular secretion, it takes place throughout the nephron. It takes place throughout the nephron. The substances that are secreted. Please note that most of the substances secreted are what we call this hydrogen ions, ammonia, and potassium. Other than that, weak acids and bases are also secreted. Okay, meaning when you say secretion, no, you bring them into the tubular lumen. You bring them in the tubular lumen. You bring them in the ultrafiltrate. Ganun po for your tubular secretion. So you have here your substances that are secreted. Of course, you have your hydrogen ions, ammonia, potassium, and weak acids or bases. So your weak acids or bases will come from metabolism, or they are metabolic products, or they are from your exogenous sources. Okay, and so number one, they are substances which are incompletely metabolized by the body. Another one is these are substances that are not metabolized at all and secreted unchanged, like your radiographic contrast media. Okay, and then substances that are not normally present in the plasma, like drug metabolites. Okay, those are substances that are secreted. note that some of these substances cannot pass the glomerular filter. They cannot pass the glomerular filter. Okay? Probably because, okay, especially for your metabolic products or exogenous sources, okay, probably because they are not soluble in water and they need a carrier like proteins. They need a carrier protein. There are a lot of what you call this, there are a lot of substances that are, there are a lot of metabolic products and exogenous sources that are bound to albumin or to protein carriers. And yes, they cannot pass the glomerular filter. Again, some are bound to albumin because they are not soluble in water. Or, yes, they are not soluble in water, and of course, the size is increased. That is why they are not filtered out in the glomerulus. And yes, your tubular secretion provides a means for the release of these substances, of these metabolic products and exogenous sources that are not filtered in the glomerulus. Okay, and so please note that these metabolic products, they interact with the endothelium binding sites and are transported into renal tubular cells. They are transported into your renal tubular cells and they are secreted into the tubular lumen. Ganyan po ang mangyayari. Okay, again, this, what you call this, substances that are not filtered, okay, the substances that cannot pass the glomerular filter, like your large and protein-bound substances, they interact with endothelium binding sites and they are transported. Eventually, of course, they are transported into the renal tubular cells. And what will happen then? Okay, they are secreted or transported into the tubular lumen. Okay, that is a means, that is the means wherein your non water soluble metabolites, which are bound to your carriers, are excreted, okay, or are secreted into the ultrafiltrate. Here are the substances that are secreted. At the PCT, you have your you have hydrogen, ammonia, weak acids, and bases. In the loop of Henle, urea is secreted. In the distal convoluted tubule, hydrogen, ammonia, potassium, uric acid, and some drugs are secreted. And in your collecting tubule, hydrogen ions, ammonia, and potassium, as well as some drugs are secreted in the collecting tubule. Tubular concentration. Please note that your renal medulla is the only body tissue that is hypertonic to plasma. It is hypertonic, meaning it has more solutes than the plasma. Okay, please note that the osmolality increases from the cortex border going to the papillary tips. Okay, in the cortex border there is a lesser osmolarity, but then as you move through going to the papillary tips, it increases. Okay, the osmolality increases. And please note that this gradient is shared by all medullary components, including the cells, the interstitial fluid, as well as the blood vessels and the blood. Okay? Making your renal medulla hyperosmotic po talaga. Okay? And then you have your countercurrent mechanism here. This one is important in the tubular concentrating ability. Okay? Please note that your descending limb of loop of Henle is permeable to water but not to solutes. Meaning, okay, water leaves the filtrate. Water leaves the filtrate and it moves to the interstitium. It moves to the interstitium, leaving the filtrate concentrated. Okay? Please note also that your ascending limb is impermeable to water, but actively pumps out sodium and chloride. Okay, it is impermeable to water, but actively pumps out sodium and chloride. Okay, the filtrate, the filtrate that is concentrated, the filtrate coming from the descending limb of loop of Henle, which is concentrated, becomes diluted. Okay, it becomes diluted when it reaches your ascending limb. Why? Because water is, I mean, because sodium and chloride is pumped out. Okay, it is pumped out in the medullary interstitium. So earlier, there is a dilution. Okay, but then since you are pumping out again, you pump out sodium and chloride going to the medullary interstitium, the medullary interstitium becomes hypersmotic red. Okay, it becomes hypersmotic. Okay, so this sodium and chloride leaving the filtrate in the ascending loop of Henle will prevent the dilution of the medullary interstitium, still keeping the hypersmotic medullary interstitium by the water reabsorbed from the descending loop. Okay, again, your sodium and chloride leaving the filtrate in the ascending loop of Henle prevent dilution of the medullary interstitium by the water that is reabsorbed from the descending loop. That is actually the first phase of your countercurrent mechanism. And then second, you have your vasa recta. Your vasa recta, please note your vasa recta, this is a blood vessel this is a capillary that what you call this, encompass your loop of Henle, that encompass your loop of Henle. Please note that your vasa recta, in the vasa recta, blood flows in opposite directions in the descending and ascending limbs of the nephron. Okay, and yes, your vasa recta, they act as countercurrent exchanger pa rin. Okay, preserving the medullary gradient by allowing solutes to diffuse in and out, washing them away. And yes, please note that maintenance of this osmotic gradient is essential for the final concentration of the filtrate when it reaches the collecting duct. And yes, that is for your countercurrent mechanism. First, of course, is your the action of your descending and ascending limb and the interstitium, and then the interstitium between and the interstitium and your vasa recta. In your second countercurrent mechanism, the second countercurrent mechanism actually is passive. Okay, and so passive process, the exchange process accordingly, which takes place between your vasa recta, the vascular bed, and the renal medulla. What happens here in your vasa recta and the interstitium? The reabsorbed solutes and water in the medullary interstitium are passively moved by diffusion into the vasa recta. Again, okay, the reabsorbed solutes and water in the medullary interstitium are passively moved by diffusion into the vasa. And yes, similar to the countercurrent mechanism in the tubular lumen, the blood osmolality is progressively concentrated as it flows toward the papillary tips, but progressively diluted when it ascends, going into the renal cortex. Okay? When it goes to your, again, when it goes to your papillary tip, this is your papillary tip, and when it goes to your renal cortex, it is progressively diluted when it ascends accordingly. Okay, please note that this vascular countercurrent mechanism provides a means to supply nutrients to the medullary tissue, as well as to remove reabsorbed water for distribution elsewhere in the blood. Okay, and yes, as a consequence of these actions, it maintains the hypertonicity of the medulla pa rin. Okay, it maintains the hypertonicity of the medulla. Again, for your medulla, I mean, again, for your vasa recta, the blood flows in opposite direction in the descending and ascending limbs of the vessels, no? And yes, this one maintains a gradient by slow blood flow and solute exchange. And yes, please note that your collecting ducts, they use this gradient to reabsorb water under the influence of antidiuretic hormone, producing a concentrated urine. Okay, please try to what we call this, observe again the movement of the blood flow here. Okay, the blood flow of blood. Of course, this is the cortex and this is the medulla. Okay. It's actually a table showing you the segment and the osmolality change in the fluid or in the ultrafiltrate. Okay, in the proximal convoluted tubule, the fluid or the filtrate enters isosmotic. Okay, isosmotic from the Bowman's capsule, and it enters the PCT isosmotic, and it will exit the PCT proximal convoluted tubule isosmotic. In the loop of Henle, it enters isosmotic, going into the thin descending limb, which progressively becomes hypersmotic. Why? Because there is a reabsorption of water. I mean, there is water leaves, okay, in the thin descending limb. Okay? At the U-turn, it is maximally hyperosmotic. At the hairpin turn or at the U-turn, it is maximally hypersmotic. And yes, at the thin ascending, it becomes progressively hyposmotic. Hyposmotic because your sodium and chloride are actively pumped out of the lumen. Sodium and chloride are actively pumped out. Okay? Thereby, at the loop of Henle, the fluid will exit slightly hyposmotic. It will exit slightly hyposmotic. In your distal convoluted tubule, the fluid enters slightly hyposmotic and then exits isosmotic. In the collecting tubules, okay, it enters isosmotic and exits, and it varies as it varies as it exits. Okay, and so it's under the control of your ADH. Can be hyperosmotic, hyposmotic, or isosmotic. Okay, please note, as for, since I am concerned with the terms, the fluid present here is still ultrafiltrate. The ultrafiltrate pa rin po ang tawag dito. The fluid present. Also, in the loop of Henle, ultrafiltrate pa rin. Ultrafiltrate, still at the DCT. But then, soon as the fluid reaches the collecting tubules, accordingly, it is already urine. According to reference materials, soon as the fluid reaches the collecting tubules or the lumen, the collecting duct, they are already called as urine. Take a look at the action of your antidiuretic hormone or your arginine vasopressin or simply your vasopressin. Please note that water reabsorption in the collecting tubules requires the presence of antidiuretic hormone. Your antidiuretic hormone here is a hormone that is produced in the hypothalamus and is stored in the posterior pituitary. Okay, it's stored in the posterior pituitary. What is the action? Okay, let's take a look here. Please note that in the heart, there are vascular baroreceptors. What do these baroreceptors do? They monitor arterial blood pressure. They monitor arterial blood pressure. Okay? And yes, when there is an increase in arterial blood pressure, this one is a that signal for the hypothalamus to inhibit the release of EDH into the bloodstream. Okay, it is a signal. This increase in blood pressure will signal your hypothalamus to inhibit or to decrease the release of EDH into the bloodstream. Okay, since you have high blood pressure. So if there is an increase in blood pressure, the release of ADH is inhibited, thereby lowering ADH content. Okay, please note that as the plasma level of antidiuretic hormone decreases, the epithelium of the collecting tubules changes in such a way that the movement of water from the lumen going into the medullary interstitium decreases. Okay, your ADH will, what do you call this? Your ADH or the collecting tubule, the cells in the collecting tubule will uh, prevent the movement of water from the lumen to the medullary interstitium. Okay? Thereby, if water is not thereby if water is not permitted to move outside of the lumen, then it will stay inside the tubules of your collecting duct. Okay, they will remain in the lumen of the tubule, resulting in an increased urine output. Increased urine output, and there is a dilute urine also. Okay? In contrast, when there is a decrease in blood pressure, your baroreceptors, your vascular baroreceptors in the heart will sense it and then will signal your hypothalamus to release ADH, to increase the release of ADH. Under ADH stimulation, the collecting tubule epithelium will change. Okay? It will change, making them permeable, making them more permeable to water. Okay, thereby, there is an increase in water reabsorption in the collecting duct. Okay, as a result of high medullary osmolarity, and yes, producing a concentrated urine. In this case, there is a low urine output. That is for your action of ADH. To sum that up, if there is an increase in blood pressure, ADH is inhibited. Okay, ADH is inhibited. The cells of your collecting tubule, will, the cells of your collecting tubule is not permeable to water. Okay, thereby retaining the water inside the lumen. End result, there is an increase in urine output and a dilute urine. Okay, that is for your ADH. And of course, in case naman of decrease in blood pressure, you need to retain water. Thereby producing a decreased urine output and urine that is concentrated. That is for your decrease in blood pressure. In decrease in blood pressure, ADH release is increased and it will increase water reabsorption in the collecting duct, thereby decreasing a urine output. Decreasing urine output and producing a urine that is that is concentrated. Okay, please note that your antidiuretic hormone secretion does not alter sodium and chloride reabsorption. Your ADH secretion does not alter sodium and chloride reabsorption. For your sodium, it is governed by your aldosterone naman. Okay, and so it is governed by your aldosterone. Sodium is governed by aldosterone. Okay, I guess that's it for your tubular reabsorption, secretion, and tubular concentration. Okay? Okay, I guess that's it for today, and we will continue next time. Thank you for making this far. Thank you. And yes, this has been Gael, reminding you to live fully, love deeply, laugh often, keep learning, and never forget to enjoy the ride. Thank you. This is Gael, forever grateful. See you around.